10 times better than you, my mother said, each word sharp enough to cut through bone. Her voice echoed against the chandelier-lit dining room, bouncing off the gold-framed portraits of ancestors who'd never known me. My brother smirked, leaning back like a king on a stolen throne, his laugh loud enough to make the silverware vibrate. The air smelled of roasted lamb and betrayal, heavy and suffocating. My chest burned, but I held my face still, as if carved from stone. Hy everyone, my name is Celine, I'm 28. And if you've ever been told you are less than your own blood, stay with me. It wasn't just the words. It was the timing. My brother, gone for years, returning only when my father's will was unsealed. He hadn't called on my birthdays, hadn't come when I was sick, hadn't stood beside me when I fought through nights of loneliness. And yet, here he was, demanding half of everything, with my mother nodding like a priest blessing his sins. The mahogany table creaked as my aunt leaned in, her lips twisting into a whisper, "Don't make this dramatic, Celine." Her eyes, glassy and cold, held no mercy. Every breath I took felt like swallowing shards of ice. I glanced at the stack of legal envelopes resting on the sideboard, unopened, weighty, waiting. My inheritance wasn't money to me. It was survival, it was proof that all my silent endurance had meant something. To them, it was simply spoils. My brother's voice cut in again, casual and cruel. "Face it, sis, you've always been the shadow. I'm the reason this family name shines." The chandelier above flickered, as if even the light itself recoiled. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the quiet storm gathering inside. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. A small, steady smile, the kind that unsettles those who think they've won too easily. My mother tilted her head, confused by my silence. My brother raised his glass, already tasting victory. But what none of them realized was that this was only their opening act. Mine was still to come, and it would leave echoes they'd never escape. The silence I left hanging in that dining room followed me into the hallway, clinging like smoke after a fire. My heels tapped against the marble, steady and deliberate, while behind me their laughter cracked through the air like breaking glass. They thought I had surrendered. They thought I was walking away beaten. But I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was leaving to sharpen my truth. I stepped into my father's old study, the only room in that house that still felt like it breathed with memory instead of greed. Dust swirled in the lamplight, and the leather-bound books seemed to lean closer, as if urging me to hold my ground. On the desk lay the one thing my brother hadn't asked about, the locked folder my father entrusted to me before his final breath. Inside it weren't just papers. It was a map of everything he feared would happen, his son swooping back like a vulture, my mother enabling him, the inheritance turned into a weapon. But father had left me his voice, carefully documented in legal clarity. "Celine," he had written in his meticulous hand, "the weight of this family rests on the honest shoulders, not the loudest ones. Protect what is yours." My breath caught as I traced the ink, each word heavier than the last. For years I thought my father only saw me as a quiet shadow, the one who kept the home together while others wandered free. But these pages proved otherwise. He saw my endurance as strength, my silence as resolve. He had trusted me with the truth. Down the hall, my brother's voice boomed again, dripping arrogance. "She'll hand it over. She always does. She was born to lose." Their laughter followed, cruel and easy. I closed the folder slowly, my reflection caught in the glass frame of father's portrait. My eyes didn't look defeated. They looked calm, too calm. The kind of calm that terrifies when you realize it's the pause before a storm. I whispered into the stillness, "You called me a shadow, Marcus. But shadows always outlast the fire." And in that moment, I knew, I wouldn't just defend what was mine. I would turn their hunger into their downfall. Not with screams, not with vengeance shouted across the table, but with silence sharpened into a blade they'd never see until it was already at their throats. The rehearsal was over. The real performance had begun. The next morning, I returned to the house. The air smelled of coffee and entitlement, my brother's laughter drifting from the kitchen like smoke that refused to clear. My mother's voice, warm and indulgent, carried too. "Marcus, you've always been destined for more. Celine will understand. She always bends." I paused in the doorway, letting them bask in their illusion. Neither noticed me at first, their backs turned as they plotted how to slice my inheritance like cake. Marcus tapped at his phone, already searching for properties, already spending what wasn't his. Morning, I said evenly. The word landed like ice water. Both heads snapped toward me, their surprise poorly masked. You're here early, Marcus smirked, trying to recover. Changed your mind. I set my bag on the counter, pulled out the folder, and placed it down with deliberate care. The thud silenced the room. My mother's smile faltered. Marcus leaned forward, eyes gleaming with greed. Is that it? He asked, reaching. My hand pressed down on the folder before his fingers touched it. No, I whispered. This is the part you never saw coming. His brow furrowed, confusion breaking his grin. My mother shifted uneasily, sensing a shift she couldn't control. I spent years being quiet, I continued, voice steady, calm as glass. And you mistook my silence for weakness. But father didn't. He gave me the truth you'll never own. I opened the folder just enough for them to glimpse the first line of father's handwritten letter. The shock on my mother's face told me she recognized his penmanship instantly. Marcus blinked, his smirk cracking. You think you're clever, he muttered, trying to sound dismissive. But his voice wavered. I leaned closer, my words precise, deliberate. Clever? No. Just prepared. And preparation is something you never understood. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, slicing through the silence. I closed the folder again and smiled, not in triumph, but in warning. They thought the battle was theirs. They hadn't yet realized, I was writing the war. That night, I sat in my apartment with the folder spread across the table like a deck of loaded cards. Every page my father left behind wasn't just protection, it was strategy. His will had layers, and in the fine print lay a clause neither my mother nor Marcus had bothered to read. The inheritance wasn't an open door, it was a test. My father had written, to the child who remained steadfast when others strayed, the estate shall pass in full. Should disputes arise, only documented loyalty shall decide. Documented loyalty. That phrase burned in my mind. For years, I had letters, receipts, transfers, proof that I alone stood beside my father when Marcus vanished. I remembered the hospital visits, the mortgage I covered when funds ran dry, the care I gave while my mother looked the other way. All of it was there, catalogued, undeniable. I arranged the documents into neat stacks, each one a nail for the coffin of their claims. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of justice pressing close. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. I felt like the heir my father always intended. The phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, be ready tomorrow. Lawyer at 10. Don't drag this out. I stared at the screen, my lips curling into a quiet smile. Drag this out? He had no idea I was about to end it before it began. Sleep didn't come easy. I lay awake, listening to the city hum outside my window, my chest tight with a strange mix of grief and determination. I mourned the family I wished I had, the mother who never chose me, the brother who saw me only as an obstacle. But grief had no room in tomorrow's battle. Tomorrow, I would arrive not as the silent daughter. I would arrive as the storm. And when I walked into that lawyer's office, carrying every page my father entrusted to me, they would finally understand, shadows don't disappear. They become the outline of truth. The lawyer's office smelled of old leather and polished wood, the kind of place where truths were unwrapped slowly, like fine cigars. My mother sat rigid in her cream suit, pearls gleaming like tiny shields. Marcus lounged beside her, tapping his foot impatiently, as if the room already belonged to him. I walked in last, folder in hand, my steps measured. The lawyer, an older man with sharp glasses, rose politely. Miss Celine, glad you could join us. Marcus smirked. We won't take much of her time. She knows what's fair. Fair. The word burned on my tongue, bitter as rust. I slid into the chair across from them, laying the folder gently on the table. Marcus's eyes darted to it, his greed too loud to hide. The lawyer cleared his throat. Before we begin, I must state, Mr. Thorne's will is unconventional. His voice carried weight, each word deliberate. He set conditions. Loyalty, presence, support. Only the child who demonstrated these consistently is entitled to the estate. My mother's face drained of color. Marcus sat up straighter, forcing a laugh. Loyalty? I'm his son. Blood speaks for itself. I leaned forward, voice soft but steady. Blood may speak, but evidence screams. With that, I opened the folder. One by one, I placed documents across the desk, hospital records signed by me, bank transfers I made to cover father's debts, receipts of medications I bought, letters in his handwriting thanking me for my care. The lawyer's brow furrowed deeper with each page. Marcus's smirk cracked. This doesn't prove. It proves everything, I cut in, my words slicing the air. While you vanished, I stayed. While you thrived, I carried the weight. Father knew this day would come. He left the truth in my hands. Silence swallowed the room. My mother's pearls trembled against her collarbone. Marcus's fists tightened, his confidence leaking away like air from a punctured tire. The lawyer folded his hands. It appears, by all legal measures, the estate belongs solely to Celine. And just like that, the storm began. Marcus shot up from his chair so fast it nearly toppled backward. His face burned red, veins straining at his temples. This is a trick, he barked, his voice cracking in the solemn quiet of the office. She manipulated him. She always manipulated him. The lawyer adjusted his glasses calmly. Mr. Thorne's documents are clear. Unless you have evidence of fraud, the estate is settled. My mother's eyes darted between us, panic swimming behind her polished mask. Marcus, she whispered, reaching for his arm, sit down. We'll figure another way. But he yanked away, glaring at her with the same venom he aimed at me. I sat still, hands folded neatly on the folder. My voice was quiet, but it cut through his rage. For once, Marcus, you can't charm your way through the truth. Father saw you for what you are, and he saw me for what I've always been. He sneered, leaning forward until his shadow fell across the table. You think this makes you stronger? You think this erases the fact that no one wanted you? The words hit sharp, but they didn't break me. I had heard them all my life, phrases crafted to keep me small. But this time, I lifted my chin, letting his hatred echo back at him like an empty song. Wanting and deserving aren't the same. I may not have been wanted, but I earned everything you abandoned. The lawyer cleared his throat. The matter is decided. Miss Celine inherits in full. I'll finalize the documents immediately. The sound of his pen scratching across paper felt like thunder sealing the sky. Marcus collapsed back into his chair, chest heaving, rage bubbling with no place to go. My mother looked smaller than I had ever seen her, her pearls now nothing more than beads choking her neck. I rose, gathering the folder once more. You both taught me something today, I said softly. That blood doesn't define family, actions do. And your actions have spoken loud enough for a lifetime. The room stayed silent as I walked out, leaving them with nothing but their echoes. The city outside felt louder than usual, horns, footsteps, voices colliding like restless waves. But inside me, silence ruled. Not the silence of weakness they once mistook for surrender. This was the silence of power, sharpened and calm. I carried the folder close to my chest as I walked home, though I no longer needed its protection. The truth had already been written into law. Still, its weight reminded me of the years I bore alone, nights I sat by father's bed, mornings I stretched a single paycheck to cover 2 lives, afternoons when the phone stayed silent because Marcus never called. That silence had carved me, and now it was my strength. Later, I stood at my apartment window, watching the city lights flicker like 1,000 eyes. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, you'll regret this. You've turned the family against you. I stared at the words, a cold smile forming. The family? He meant my mother, the same woman who had declared him 10 times better than me. If that was the standard of family, then perhaps I was better off without it. I didn't reply. Some wars end not with bullets or fire, but with refusal. Refusal to bend, to answer, to keep carrying weight that isn't yours. Instead, I pulled out father's final letter again. His handwriting wavered but strong enough to pierce me still. Strength isn't loud, Celine. It is quiet. It is the choice to endure without losing yourself. When the day comes, stand tall. Don't waste words proving them wrong, their collapse will do that for you. I pressed the page against the window glass, letting the city lights shine through it like stars. For the first time, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. I felt like the rightful heir, not just of wealth, but of resilience. The storm was no longer theirs to unleash. It was mine to command. And tomorrow, they would learn that storms don't fade, they leave scars. The following week, I received an invitation I hadn't expected: dinner at my mother's house. No apology, no warmth in the card, just neat handwriting: "Come. Let's talk." I almost didn't go. But something inside me whispered that closure isn't given, it's taken. The dining room was just as I left it: chandelier glowing, table gleaming, portraits watching. Marcus sat at the head seat this time, as if clinging to a throne that was already gone. My mother hovered, her pearls still shining but her eyes hollow. "Celine," she said softly, "we can start over. Share a little, at least. Family should stay together." I looked at her, then at Marcus, who smirked as if he'd written her lines himself. For years, I would have bent under those words, desperate to belong. But tonight, I wasn't the same woman. I placed father's final letter in the center of the table. "Family isn't measured by blood or pearls or empty titles," I said evenly. "It's measured by loyalty, by presence, by truth. You both chose your side long ago." Marcus rolled his eyes, muttering, "Dramatic as always." But my mother's gaze faltered, landing on the ink she knew too well. Her hand trembled, reaching, then pulling back. She didn't speak again. I stood, smoothing my coat, my voice steady. "I'm not here to divide what's mine. I'm here to leave behind what was never real." The chandelier hummed above us, light spilling like judgment across their faces. Neither stopped me as I walked toward the door. For the first time, I felt lighter, not because I had won an inheritance, but because I had released the chains of needing their approval. Outside, the night air wrapped around me like freedom. I carried no bitterness, only clarity. They could keep their illusions. I had something better: my father's faith, my own strength, and a life unshaken by their absence. As I walked away, the words rang in my mind like a final verdict. They thought silence was weakness. But silence is where I built my power.